So Amy, you and I go a long way in our journey history at Microsoft, and you are a colleague, but also a very close partner at the senior leadership team of our company. And I've got a very deep respect for you and what you've done, what you keep doing for the company and beyond. I remember actually vividly many great, exciting one-on-ones we had in our professional life, but this conversation is going to be a bit different. This is going to be more personal, maybe emotional at times, as we discuss your own leadership and transformation journey and the way you think about your own purpose, your leadership philosophy, your impact at work and beyond the professional circles as well. So it's a delight, Amy, to have you on my Positive Leadership Podcast here in Redmond in Washington State. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm excited and honored that you asked me.
So to start with, Amy, I'd like to get back to your family roots. If you understand well, your childhood was in a small city in Kentucky and then in Nashville, Tennessee. You and I have actually two things in common. We both grew up in the South. You in Kentucky in the US and me in Little France in Nice in the French Riviera. And I think second thing we have in common, our dads were both doctors. But none of us decided to become doctors. And none of us as well stayed in the South. So you didn't become a teacher either, despite, I think, having many professors, teachers in your family. So can you tell us more how your parents, I think your grandma played an important role as well, your sister, and others significant have shaped some of your core values that you consider as your moral compass? And what are those early life values that in a way still define who you are and the way you think about life? I know it's a big question to start.
It is a big question to start. And we do have those things in common. I did grow up in Kentucky, in a relatively small town, a bit away from where my mother's side of the family had grown up, and which we were quite close to. We, and I always had a very tight-knit family unit.
Yes. Very close. Yeah.
Very close. And in so many ways, I would say when I think about core values, leading by example. We weren't a family that maybe talked about the example you should set. It was absolutely about the actions.
Doing it.
That you took.
Showing it.
Showing it every day.
Every day.
Whether that was showing how you cared for someone through actions, maybe it was showing that hard work, which is probably a second principle. That hard, valuable work.
Yes.
Done in the pursuit not of yourself or in recognition, but in the enablement of others or an outcome. It was never, and I think probably that also emanates from the sense of, we grew up in the church and so, which is not, that's relatively common, I think, in many smaller areas.
Yes.
The church was the center of the community and the center of the value system in some ways.
Yes.
So the concept was never that you did it for you. You did it for a bigger purpose, whatever that purpose was to you.
Yes.
And in our sense, that may have been mostly about the community in which you resided, the family, friends, the network, the town. And so I always knew that if you, in our house, if you wanted to be understood as having a good compass, a good understanding of your role, you did that through hard work toward ends that benefited not you but community. And I think that shows itself in many of their choices. As you noted, my father's a doctor, my sister's a doctor, my mother was a nurse. My grandfather was a teacher. My grandmother was active in the church, cousins, family members, all in that community and
involved.
Yeah.
No, it's really transpired, I think, in your personality as well. It's interesting because, in a way, the words you've been using, Amy, are very aligned with some of the fundamentals of positive leadership, which is you go at one point from everything about yourself. I think we kind of all go through that cycle at some point. to be to the service of others. Understanding actually the way you can do that in your lives, professional, personal, social, together, is a big accomplishment. So I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that. So, no, really, one of the core foundations again of positive leader is self-awareness, self-confidence, so that you can actually allow yourself to be authentic, vulnerable, and caring. Big words, challenging words, challenging reality. But really, it takes a lot of hard work on yourself, on oneself, to take care of you physically, mentally, emotionally, so that when you start your day, you feel a positive energy flowing into your veins and into your mind and then into your mouth, and it flows. So what I'd like you maybe to share with our listeners is, what are your daily routines, if you have any? Many of my guests have some routines in the morning and in the night, maybe as well, if you can share, where, especially in the toughest days, whereas the CFO, one of the largest companies on the planet, you have to deal with some very, very big challenges. What do you say to yourself?
That's such a good question. I do have some routines. And I think actually I've adopted them in this job more so than maybe I realized before. And I think to some reasons it's the things you talked about. As you become more aware of how you handle pressure and where that pressure comes from and why does it exist. I realized I needed better tools to handle that. Number one, sleep is incredibly valuable. People often, I think, even myself at times, used to think, oh, well, it's about the hours you work. Now I'm a big advocate. It is the opposite.
Exactly.
It's about the sleep you get.
Quality of sleep.
It's about the quality of that rest, the mind, the break that your body needs. It's not about how many hours you put in, but it's about preparing yourself to be really ready to have a meeting or a moment in the workday or outside the workday that's respectful. And it's a funny word to choose, but I think a lot more now that if I have a routine that values sleep, that values fresh air and exercise or mental breaks, I tend to try to take a walk in the morning. Maybe if I need to be in the office, it's around lunch.
Breathing as well, maybe?
Just to take a little
deep breaths, meditation. Break.
I'm a fan of the Headspace app, but just because for me it creates some structure. We use it as a family in the evenings.
So you do family sessions? That's great.
And I think in some ways it's just a time to be together, but also to teach habits. That we think are important. So there's some routine, but I think if I were to share maybe why I think that investment creates the energy that you and I want to see in a meeting, because we've seen the opposite, right? I think when you get into leadership seats, and it doesn't have to be the seats you and I are in, but in any position, you can often forget what the purpose of a meeting or a moment is. And it can seem like for you and I, it could be getting an answer. Usually that's not the purpose of a meeting anymore.
No.
It's about what example does that moment give to the people who see you or I once a year? Once every 90 days? Once in a career?
Maybe,
And that moment and what it means.
What would you take away from that as well? What is the...
What happens in those 55 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever.
Interaction,
And what do they leave with? And so when I think about why do you create routines? Why do you create space in your day to be ready? It's because to me it's another day. To a lot of people, it's their moment.
It's their day.
It's their day. Their big day. Their capital D day. As opposed to you and I, where it's Tuesday. Or Wednesday.
So you're very sensitive to that people, situation awareness and context for the people surrounding yourself.
Because if you miss those, you miss everything, really.
Agree with you.
About what it means to really do a job.
Yes.
As opposed to complete the task,
yes.
right?
So building on that, Amy, what is actually a good day for you? And what does it mean for you as a leader to have a good day?
I'd say that a lot, is that I think you have to put yourself in that place. And it is a choice.
It doesn't happen by accident.
It cannot happen by accident, and you and I both know that. It's that a good day is a way I tell myself that if I don't reset, there are things going on in everybody's life that are the opposite on occasion of good.
Yes.
There's pressure, there's sadness, there's things that take energy.
Yes.
And I try to then tell myself, I need to make today good. And so you have to decide to do that. And for me, I tend to do it on my either drive in, or if I'm staying and working from my home office, I tend to do it on a walk and say, okay, now is the time.
So you prepare your mind.
Prepare the mind to say, here is my day.
Yeah.
Here are the moments that I need to accomplish. And it needs to be good. It doesn't mean everything that's going to happen that day is good or positive or easy. It means you're making a choice about how you respond.
Yes.
And if you start there, it's far, I think, more empowering.
It is.
To make better decisions.
And I think, I'm sure we'll get back to that, Amy, it really creates a wonderful environment for others to speak up, to open up, to thrive, because you make it much easier for everyone else as well, which I think we all realize along the time in our careers. So one thing that's really interesting about your career is that your past leadership is not a linear one. I mean, as we discussed earlier, you came from a family that valued education, servicing the others as a doctor. Your mom taught in nursing school as well. And in fact, I think I heard you mention that pretty much all of your mom's family, again, were in the education sector. But pretty quickly at college, you decided not to become, as I said, a doctor, didn't go into teaching, but ended in finance. So how did that work? I mean, most CFOs have a background in accounting, financial law. You don't. You got a bachelor, I think, in economics. I mean, very great background from Duke, then MBA from Harvard, and then started Goldman Sachs in 2002. And there's this great quote, which I found, where you say that you continually took jobs where you are not really qualified for. So how important has it been for you to move outside of your areas of comfort, outside beyond the plan of record you had, to take risk and accelerate your personal growth?
It's interesting. I think, Jean-Philippe, we talked earlier and you mentioned there are lots of things that are critical to being comfortable taking risk, but probably the one that's the most critical is self-awareness and self-confidence. Those two aspects. And so I think earlier in my career, I was not nearly as comfortable. And it's because, I took a job at Goldman Sachs. It's true. I had taken 0 finance classes at that time, 0 accounting, although I still haven't taken those, as you know. And really, I was just looking for a job, not a career. A job. And everybody else seemed to be getting jobs, and I feel I needed one, and other people had chosen banking. At that point in time, a lot of people chose consulting jobs or banking jobs, and I didn't want to travel as much. And so...
Well, at least you went to New York, right?
Oh, yes. At least made it that far. That seemed very far at the time.
I guess from the south, right?
Yes, we were not a traveling family for lots of reasons. And so, you take a job because you don't have a better idea in that moment. And then you learn, which I've always said to people, I learned parts of it I liked, parts of it I didn't enjoy as much. Through that, I learned a little bit more about what maybe my own talents were, but was never terribly confident in them. you get validation through that work.
Mm-hmm.
You build a little confidence.
Yeah.
But then it took me maybe longer than others to realize that I maybe wasn't made for that work. Although I liked many things. I worked there for a long time.
For a long time, many years, right?
Yeah. So it wasn't, I always say to people, they're disappointed when maybe their first job choice doesn't work. And I'm like, I've been through many that I maybe wasn't deemed as successful.
Yes.
But in those moments, you have to find that awareness. And as I maybe got into my early 30s, which I remind people, I had no job at that point. I had quit my job. Mm-hmm. I had no job.
And no plans.
No plans at 30.
On your own.
On my own.
Yeah.
And was sort of lost, right? Like, should I go into academics? Should I pursue a completely different discipline?
Didn't know. Mm-hmm.
No plan. And I simply had a friend here who said, let's just find some grounding. Like, let's get another job and just work on it. Yeah. And I realized in that moment, I think I had solved for everybody else but my own sort of confidence and finding that grounding. And so maybe at 30, when I take a job at Microsoft, I found that grounding.
Huh. It was an accident.
It was a bit of an accident. Or something else at work. And I say to people all the time, one of the best accidents that could have happened.
That could have happened, yeah. No, I mean, it's great to hear the way you've been thinking about actually experiencing work, Amy, and the way you didn't necessarily have a vocation as you started, but you grounded yourself, getting to know yourself in reality, and then deciding to find the right place to go and grow your potential. It makes me think actually of a conversation I had with someone, with Herminia Ibarra. She's professor of organizational change at London Business School. And this is what she told me on a podcast. Don't let the way you've done things in the past define you. And don't be afraid to make radical change. And she talks about the cycle of acting like a leader and then thinking like a leader. Of a change from the outside in, which creates what she calls outsides. So what she means is the principle holds that the only way to think like a leader is to first act, take action. And I think you are someone who takes action. I can confirm that to my listeners in a big way. So you got a lot of incredible experiences, of course, along your career at Microsoft, and in ways that could help you changing and shaping your perspective as well, I guess, on the world and the economy, on the business, and many things else. So you've been living you of that. And so one of the key, attributes really that we find as we expose ourselves to new experiences is the way we are able, again, to build that positive energy in ourselves and to create an environment, again, for our team to do our best work. So can you tell us the way you can help people in your team to, particularly in some of the most challenging times, and we have, like any large company, we've gone through ups and downs, through financial crisis, 2008, and maybe a recession coming up, who knows? And so how have you built your people faith in themselves? How do you do that?
This is a hard one because I think it's also grounded in some consistency.
Yeah.
Right. People always ask, because I think they may think my job is different than it is. I tell people I do three things as the CFO of Microsoft. I pick leaders.
Yeah, number one.
I develop leaders. Mm-hmm. And I allocate resources. There are lots of other things at some level. Earnings calls, but that's not really the job.
The job, yes, you're right. Yeah.
The job, there's three things I said.
Yeah.
Two of them are about building people.
People and teams. Yes.
Because at the scale that you or I are asked to run organizations, when you start to confuse the real job, it can be a real challenge, because if you think of the job as picking leaders and developing leaders, and then the last, resourcing, you remind yourself of the things you can uniquely do.
Yes.
As opposed to all the things that can be done in the seat.
Can be done, the long task list. So back to your talents and unique skills and passion as well, I guess.
It comes back to those things, right? Because then you say, okay, every action, every meeting, tying it back, every moment that you may have a group organization come together remotely or together, every time you're in a big group, you get to decide how you're going to do those three things. And so for me, building those teams means creating clarity so that they and the leaders know it's their responsibility. Realizing that power doesn't come from being the decider. Real power comes from building an organization that can make decisions and
when it's
build.
On and
and so when you start to move the ego and the id from the thing, from the job, you start to spend a lot more time on others and teams and leaders. And a lot less time making sure you're the person. And I think that journey is the journey of what that you're talking about. You have to say, okay, well, I'm going to spend my time building confidence. I'm going to spend my time building confidence in others. I'm going to spend my time coaching before the meeting so that I'm not in the meeting. And you think about every choice. Who's going to respond to the email? Where should the email go? It's in every action.
Every small detail matters.
Every small detail. It matters.
I love the way you talked about those kind of three Uber priorities in a way in your life, professional life, that is Microsoft. I mean, it'd be good then maybe to discuss beyond that professional life. And the way you use that as your compass to really understand what is expected from you to achieve in that particular moment, instant, with that interaction with customers, with people, with teams, with analysts, and back to those fundamentals. So I think that brings so much clarity for a leader, and not be confused and attached to position of supposedly strengths or superiority, which is irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. And I think this is the one thing that's so hard, I think, when you or I talk about it, is a lot of people see the position in a hierarchy.
Completely.
And think with that comes things. What really comes with it is a decision to make service, like in service, part of your daily existence, not about the meeting. And that pivot, which I didn't do until later.
Same with me.
Right. You don't
you don't realize that. You don't realize the beginning.
No.
So I'd like to expand the discussion on the way you do that at scale, picking those talents, building those organization capabilities people. You and I have been together actually sponsoring the Microsoft Management Model, the famous model called Model Coach Care. We've been even registering together a learning session on LinkedIn, which I invite our listeners to check out. And you've been teaching, by the way, just to tease you, maybe one day you could be a teacher, right? Can't you?
Maybe.
You've got some kind of DNAs, I guess, from the family, and you alluded to that, actually. So anyway, back to caring. In that session, I was listening it again, and you were basically emphasizing three key practices to attract and retain the best talents. Number one, be intentional and enthusiastic about the potential for individuals to thrive and create an environment where people can actually thrive. Number two, know everyone's capabilities and aspirations, like one by one. Number three, invest in the growth of others by guiding them in navigating and growing their careers. So can you share with us the way you learned and you've been practicing that caring muscle along the way? And any kind of, not more than tips, any kind of advice, coaching advice you have for our listeners, particularly again in that moment, Amy. And of course, we've gone through the pandemic. Here comes another time, and who knows where it's going to go, depending where you live in the world as well. So how much caring helps to be in a better place.
I think this is an interesting. People interpret caring in many ways.
Oh, yes.
And I have taken caring, and lots of the language that you and I just used, is about an investment you make in someone else to understand their goals.
It's about them.
It's about them. The care is really taking the time.
Oh, yeah.
It's taking the time and the commitment to understand really what they want, really respecting those choices.
Yeah.
I think at some point you go through this naive journey as a leader around thinking everybody wants to be on the same journey you're on.
Yes.
Because it's been a really great journey. I love my journey.
Yes.
But it's mine.
Completely.
And it's my choices, it's my trades that I've made against other priorities people have. And so caring for me is about that investment to understand that the journey is theirs. And they may value different things, may likely do.
Different challenges
in their life, different things.
As well. Yep.
Different moments that matter.
Yep.
And if you do the three things you outlined, it means reserving judgment.
Yes.
And this is the hard one.
Not jumping immediately on your judgment.
My judgment of their choice.
Yes.
That's not part of it.
Yeah.
The part of it is only,
yes,
I want to understand the journey that you want to be on, and I want to think about how I can support that journey. Yes. Even if it may not match, in my mind, the journey you are like, wow, if I had your attributes, I would really want to do this.
Yeah.
I may get excited by that, but that's not the job.
That's
not the job. And I do think that's, in those moments, if I could offer, advice, it's the investment of time and the reservation of judgment. And then the energy needs to go toward the others. Love it is very complementary, obviously, to the other muscle I've been passionate about, which I know you're passionate about as well, Amy, which is of course coaching people. Which, in one of my favorite episodes I had with Michael Bungestani, reminds me, of course, of a few of the principles he's been using. I've tried to practice myself for years. Be curious, be lazy, in a sense of not finding the solution for the others, fixing the problems for the others, which I've been guilty of doing for so many years in my life, and be often, in a way, you open for that moment of coaching with people. So I'd like to expand the discussion on something additionally critical to build lasting capabilities as a team who's going to really bring its very best with you every single day in any organization, not just in a business, could be an NGO, could be public services. It's a sense of belonging, and I think it's something core to your heart as well. So could you unpack with me, what is the sense of belonging so important? How do you build it? How have you built it? I think this may be the thing I care the most about in building a team, or building any group. Whether it's in my personal life or in my professional life, which on occasion can blend themselves when we've been at a place for so long. Belonging is a sense to me of comfort and support. It's a feeling that you create in an environment that has a person focused not on putting their energy toward, how can I feel like I have all the information I need? How can I feel like I can ask for help? You take that away, because the inclination is always to ask for help.
For sure.
The inclination is always to ask. To feel like if you've made a mistake, you should raise your hand. Because there'll be aid offered.
People are going to jump to help you. Yes.
And if you feel a sense of that, I think you then create bravery.
Yes. Yes.
It lets
bravery.
People do great things.
Yeah.
It lets them offer maybe unusual suggestions to a problem. Things that seem maybe unrelated, but yet when they say them become completely related.
Yeah.
And I look back and I think when I have felt like an outsider, I never did any of those things. I never raised my hand.
Yeah.
I never whispered to the person next to me, maybe there's a better way.
Yes. Yeah.
I never sent an email asking for clarity. I never did those things.
Yeah.
When I felt a little on the outside.
Yes.
And then you think about, wow, if I felt on the outside.
What about the others?
Imagine
Yeah.
how the vast majority of people who do not have the background and privilege that you and I have must feel in those moments.
Yeah.
So then it becomes almost an imperative, like a weight.
Yes.
That if you are not doing that as a leader, if you're not enabling people to only do what they're capable, which is amazing things.
It is amazing to get that done, yes.
Then you have to take that away. And so that's why belonging for me is almost purpose.
Yes.
Because if you just for 1 second think, what don't you do when you what behaviors? And you know that they're all the things that don't make people shine.
For sure.
And so we know what people shining looks like, right? You know, the joy, the pride, the way they walk home.
Yeah.
The way they go home and say to people, I had a great day.
And I'm proud of the day I had.
And they're proud. And then that builds in your personal life.
Oh, for sure.
Right. And so when I envision that cycle, then those days you remember, did you build that? Did you think about it? And we use lots of words for it, as you know here, inclusion.
Yes,
But belonging.
It's a great word.
I think it's a nice word.
It's a great word. It also, honestly, reminds us of the belonging to our families as well. I think family roots as well. So in a way, it brings people back to their core, I think. So it's wonderful way, I think, to describe that criticality of that sense of belonging, Amy. So moving almost to the end, I was talking actually to Pete Carroll, that I think you know well as well, the Seattle Seahawks head coach, on the podcast. He's someone, as you know, who's been spending a lot of time and energy on making sure his players feel like they belong. He used that word too. And he realized that it's only when people feel like they belong that they are willing and able to hear what they need to improve actually as well. That to push yourself to your limits, to take risks, to be prepared to fail at the highest levels. And you need to feel uncomfortable from time to time. So being mindful about finding ways to making your team feel relaxed, whether it's looking them into the eyes and smiling more or coming out behind your desk, these things matter. And so coming back to your reality as well, Amy, as a CFO again, you present Microsoft to the financial markets 4 times a year. You do the Microsoft earnings call, presenting financial results to investors and media, and those webcasts, as we call them. They're huge events with a lot of intensity and questions and some answers you provide as well. And even if those things are going incredibly well and you've got an incredible track record of representing incredibly well the company, they must be very stressful events. So how do you manage those situations? I know early on you talked about your routines.
I do.
Is it what helps you, and what else do you do despite all the noise that happens in your background to be ready for that moment?
Oh, it's such a good question. And I will make a few comments about it because I do think it can be helpful beyond maybe the narrow audience of people who do CFO earnings calls.
Yeah.
I still get very nervous. I, get anxious about the moment.
Yes.
And to make sure I'm centered in that, I have a few things I do. Number one, I people laugh, I eat lunch very early.
Earlier than usually.
Than usual, and I'm already eat a little early because I'm a morning person.
So early is that?
Like 10 o'clock in the morning. So I just have
wow.
Because for me, at that point, I then don't do other things.
I got you.
So at that point, I've decided
your entire body.
My entire body needs to become more grounded.
Yes.
You need to clear your mind.
Yes.
I do not answer email. I do not answer text. My phone is
down.
Your
phone, etc.
My phone is away. I take a walk. You will recall I used to have to do one earnings call a year from a remote location at our sales event.
Oh, yes.
And so taking walks in cities I wasn't comfortable with, I think I made some of your sales team nervous because I looked like I was wandering the hallways of hotels around the world. But it was more just keeping the consistency for me.
Yeah.
Then I do some breathing exercises. And then I just read through the script one last time.
Yep.
And then I'm done.
And you're done.
And then I'm done. And after I've been doing them for a little over 9 years now, for a year. So after 30-something, the routine is still the same.
Still the same. And it works.
And I think what it does is remind me in those moments, I tell myself, it's about the real job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is to explain to the best of my ability, internally and externally, the decisions we're making, and to provide that clarity to the people who have bet on us. And that's investors, that's employees, that's customers, that's partners.
All those stakeholders.
It's all of it. And you then say, I'm going to do my best transparency, my best integrity are the things you care about.
Yes.
Not the perceived judgment that comes if a stock goes up or down. Because that's a moment.
Yeah.
The things you're really about are the durable things.
Yes.
Integrity, trust, clarity.
Yep.
So I focus on those. And of course then people say after so many calls, is it easy? Does it not take work anymore? And the answer is absolutely not. We still do all of those things, right? We still practice. We still work.
Some prep.
We still do lots of it. And I'm thankful to the people who get me ready. People may think that you're, sometimes it's a good reminder the coach is not always the one driving the team. The team actually is pretty capable. So but it does look more like that. And I think about that for every meeting. If you think about a hard conversation or an easy one.
Oh, yeah.
You should prep for it.
Yeah.
You should be clear. You should have integrity in it.
Yeah.
And I think those lessons, then give you the confidence to do the right thing.
And it can be applied to many other
almost every moments
in your life.
Personal life, professional life, a coaching moment with a teammate. It's if you remember the why, as opposed to maybe the emotional stress of the moment, I just think you go back to doing the right thing. Yeah, and I think that can sometimes be hard, but.
Fantastic coaching, and now, unfortunately, comes the very last question because you've got to prepare as well for the next earnings call, Amy. I want to finish with a discussion about basically the role of business in the world, and business community and business, in corporate world. I just recorded a fantastic discussion with Sir Ronald Cohen. Don't know if you know him. He's someone who created Apex Partners. So at the time where he was actually one of the very first VCs in the world. He created as well the first social impact bond in the world and advised the UK government and the G8 on their social innovation agenda. Ronnie, as he likes to be called, believed that our existing social contract has expired, and we are now in the process of drawing up a new one in the form of impact capitalism. He's deeply convinced that the combined power of financial markets, entrepreneurs, and big businesses to bring urgently needed solutions is vastly greater than even the power of governments. And that we must harness this power. So he believes indeed that it's time to reshape capitalism so that it delivers its promise to increase prosperity and social progress for all, spreading meaningful economic opportunity to billions of people, lessening inequality, and preserving our planet for future generations. I know this is a big and bold vision, Amy. I know it could seem almost naive at some point, but how do you see the role of the business community beyond, of course, delivering the expected financials for the shareholders, number one? Has the time come indeed to not only do that, but also be an active participant in helping the world and the planet to be a better place for you kids, my kids, and all of us?
Well, I think this is one where, you and I have spent a lot of time, even at Microsoft,
yes,
about how we can participate in that. We're lucky in many ways because we work at a place whose mission is in fact to empower those things to happen.
Yeah.
Not just for ourselves inside our walls, but to empower customers and partners to do the same. Many of whom share a vision that the role of corporations is to have profitable solutions to the problems of the planet.
Yeah.
I think is what Satya and I and you are often
love using
discuss.
Yeah.
And whether that is investments in sustainability, trying to find innovative solutions using our capital along with those and technology,
talents, etc.
To help a breakthrough. Because I do think there's both business opportunity, which is really what the conversation...
Completely. It's not philanthropy. I'm talking about philanthropy.
There's real opportunity that will be created by technical advancement to have durable solutions in climate, but in other places. And the role that we can have in seats like yours or mine is to see the world as a connected place, right? Where investments we make in wind or carbon removal are, of course, good for us. I don't want to mislead anyone. They're absolutely good for the Microsoft Corporation because we believe that our commitment to net zero is a real commitment to deliver on.
And we're executing against that commitment.
And we are execute against that commitment. But it's also those solutions by companies who have the ability to make those kind of commitments and the flexibility to do it can lead. And in fact, we feel we should lead in those ways. It matters to our employees. I think it does matter to our shareholders.
I think it does, increasingly.
I think it matters to our customers, to our partners. And so it's not that we do it for credit. You do it because it is actually a profitable solution. In search of a profitable solution to the problems of the planet. And those problems are numerous. And I think our job is to pick the ones where we can have the biggest impact. We've picked sustainability. We've picked affordable housing in places and around the world. We've picked inequality. Maybe as our largest commitments that we see where we can make a real difference. There are others. Broadband access. We can go down the list of things that can help shrink gaps. And also, who can build the next generation of employees?
For sure.
With real skills. They're valued in the market today. Build an economic opportunity that builds on itself. And so I think those are the days that help make days good. Right? When
back
you say how you get back to having a good day,
yeah.
is you remember those aren't side pursuits, they're fundamental pursuits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to think about hiring the best employees around the world, if you want to think about retaining the best people, if you want to think about building connection and inclusion and belonging,
yes,
these things do that.
Yeah.
They do that.
Yeah, they do.
And they build purpose.
Yes.
And that purpose encourages others.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I do think those things matter.
They
People
do matter.
often ask, can I do a math equation on it? And I've thought more and more maybe I can.
Yeah.
Right? Because you know what employee retention means. You know
sure.
what the best people mean.
You know the value of that.
You
yes.
know what
Yes.
Getting a profitable solution
Yeah.
to sustainability means.
Yeah.
And I've increasingly believed that if we need to do the math, we can do the math.
Yeah. What a wonderful way to end that conversation, virtually, Amy. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you a bit better. A different one-on-one that we had in the past, from Kentucky to New York to Redmond, Washington State, and more importantly to your leadership journey. I think it's a wonderful, an inspiring example for many of our listeners, particularly young female talents across the world, to feel inspired about the power they have in themselves to achieve more, and to have the bravery you talk about, to have the ability to create the space for themselves, to speak up, to grow, and to basically, carry that positive energy with others in their lives. So thank you so much for that moment, Amy. And I wish you, of course, the very best, not just for the next earnings call, but for all the big things you're going to do, not just for Microsoft, but beyond Microsoft and your community. Thanks a lot, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.